Have you ever trusted someone with your life, only to find out they were the one responsible for your deepest nightmare? Someone who promised to guide you, protect you, and see you through life's biggest moments? A family member, a loved one, someone you would never suspect of betraying you? Have you ever placed your complete trust in someone, a person so close to you, that you would never imagine they could betray you? What if this person, the one you believe is your protector, your family, is the very one who orchestrates your deepest nightmare? This is the disturbing, chilling story of Mandela, a young woman whose dreams of a bright future were shattered by the one person she trusted most. A story that involves betrayal, manipulation, a life lost, and a confession that would send shockwaves through everyone who knew the truth. Mandela had always been a bright, ambitious young woman. Born into a humble family, she worked hard throughout her life to achieve her goals. She was determined, focused, and driven, but above all, she was optimistic. As she grew older, Mandela dreamt of a future far beyond the small world she knew. When she received an acceptance letter from a prestigious university abroad, it seemed like her dreams were finally within reach. She had earned this opportunity through sheer determination. It was the chance of a lifetime. For someone like Mandela, this could be the key to unlocking the future she had always dreamed of. But there was one obstacle remaining: financing her education abroad. She couldn't afford it on her own. She knew her family couldn't bear the weight of such a large financial commitment. But she didn't worry because she had an uncle. Her uncle, a man known in their community for his wealth, success, and connections, was someone Mandela had always looked up to. He had always been a figure of strength in her life, a man who could be relied upon, a man who seemed to have the answers to everything, who promised that nothing would stand in her way. "Don't worry," he had told Mandela when she shared her concerns. "I'll take care of everything. Your family. I'll make sure you have all the support you need. Your future is waiting for you. All you have to do is go. This is your chance to shine." Mandela trusted her uncle completely. He was her father's brother, the man who had always been there during celebrations and holidays. His words reassured her, and with his promise to sponsor her education, Mandela felt the weight of her worries lift. She had a clear path ahead, one that would take her to a bright, successful future, or so she thought. Mandela prepared herself for the journey abroad, eager to start this new chapter. The excitement was palpable. She couldn't wait to see what awaited her on the other side of the world. Her family, though sad to see her go, supported her decision, knowing that this was the opportunity of a lifetime. Her uncle even promised to accompany her on the trip, assuring her father that he would make sure everything went smoothly. The day Mandela left for her new life felt like the start of something extraordinary. She bid her family farewell, assuring them that she would be safe. But as she boarded the plane, she could never have known that this flight would take her away from everything familiar and into the nightmare of her life. What began as a dream quickly devolved into something far darker than Mandela could have imagined. Upon arriving in a foreign country, her uncle's behavior began to change. The warm assurances he had given her back home seemed empty, replaced by strange, cryptic remarks. Instead of taking her to a university, he drove her to a remote, desolate location, a place far from the bustling city she had expected. At first, Mandela assumed that they were just getting things settled before moving on to the university. But soon, she began to realize that something wasn't right. The place they arrived at was not a campus, nor was it anything that resembled the bright future her uncle had promised her. There were no signs of a school, no professors, no students. Instead, there were walls high and imposing. The air was heavy with silence, broken only by the occasional sound of footsteps in the distance. Panic slowly crept into Mandela's heart. She didn't understand what was happening, but her instincts told her that something was terribly wrong. Her uncle, who had been so assuring, was now acting distant, almost cold. He told her she would be staying there for a short while to settle in before the real school arrangements were made. He promised that she would be safe, but the walls surrounding her seemed to close in, and every instinct screamed that something was horribly off. Days passed, and Mandela grew more and more uncomfortable. She was kept isolated, away from any form of communication with the outside world. Her uncle was rarely around, and when he did appear, he would tell her that the university was still handling the paperwork. But it didn't make sense. Mandela's patience began to wear thin. She had never been one to accept lies, but this time, she didn't know what to do. She trusted him, but now the cracks in the facade were starting to show. One night, everything changed. Mandela was taken violently without warning. Her uncle had betrayed her in the most horrific way possible. The promise of education, the dream of a new life, had been nothing but a lie. Her uncle had sold her into a human trafficking ring, where she was nothing more than another commodity, another pawn in a larger, far more sinister game. The trafficking ring that held her captive was run by a group of ruthless criminals, and the place she was taken to was not just any hideout. It was a den of horrors. Mandela was thrown into a world of unimaginable brutality, where her survival depended on her ability to remain silent and compliant. The women she was imprisoned with were just like her, lost, terrified, and broken. As Mandela adjusted to her terrifying new reality, she was forced to witness horrors she never thought possible. In the very room where she slept, she saw men and women dragged in, beaten, tortured, and murdered for ritualistic purposes. The people who ran the operation weren't just human traffickers, they were part of a much larger, much darker network that profited from murder and sacrifice. Some victims were killed for money. Others were slaughtered in twisted ceremonies, their lives taken in brutal rituals that made no sense. They were seen as nothing more than expendable objects. Their lives were worth nothing to their captors. Mandela, like the others, was stripped of her dignity and humanity. She was no longer a person. She was just another pawn in the hands of the traffickers. And what made it even worse was the fact that she couldn't escape. There were no windows, no doors she could flee through. The guards who kept watch were merciless, and the people who ran the den were untouchable. No one cared about the lives they destroyed. The trauma Mandela experienced was unimaginable. She couldn't comprehend the pain, the horror, the fear that consumed her every day, and all the while her uncle remained a ghost. He had betrayed her, but he also continued to lie. He kept telling her father that she was doing fine, that she was adjusting well to her new life. He told her father that she sent her regards and was doing great. But that was a lie, a web of deceit spun to cover up his monstrous betrayal. Her family had no idea that their daughter, their niece, was living a nightmare. They had no idea that the person they trusted most was the one who had sold them all out. Years passed, and Mandela's hope began to fade. She had lost everything. The future she had once dreamed of, the family she loved, the life she had worked so hard to build. She was now a shadow of the person she used to be. The walls around her seemed insurmountable, and the death and despair that filled the compound threatened to consume her. But deep down, there was still a glimmer of hope. Even in the darkest moments, Mandela refused to believe that this was all she would ever know. She held on to the belief that one day, somehow, someone would find her. Then, as if by some miracle, that day came. The police, who had been investigating human trafficking networks for years, received a critical lead. It was unclear how they obtained the information, but it didn't matter. The authorities had discovered the location of the compound, the very place where Mandela and dozens of other women were held captive. What followed was nothing short of a rescue operation that seemed almost impossible, an unexplainable twist of fate that would change Mandela's life forever. The police moved in swiftly. It was almost as though the universe had aligned to ensure that Mandela and the other captives would be freed. The compound was raided, and the horrors within were exposed to the world. The traffickers were arrested, and the compound was shut down. But the true cost of freedom wasn't just physical, it was emotional. For Mandela, the trauma of what she had witnessed would never leave her. It would follow her for the rest of her life. But the mystery didn't end there. As the police celebrated their victory, something strange began to unfold. Mandela's uncle, the man who had orchestrated her suffering, was struck with a bizarre illness. It began as a minor illness, a fever, but it rapidly escalated into something far worse. Doctors had no explanation for his symptoms. His body seemed to deteriorate at an alarming rate. Every treatment failed. No one could figure out why. And then, in his final moments, her uncle did the unthinkable. He confessed. He admitted everything about his involvement in the trafficking, the murders, and the betrayal of his own niece. He told the authorities that he had sold Mandela to the traffickers for money and power. He had orchestrated her abduction, knowing full well what would happen to her. And yet, he never once thought about the consequences for his own flesh and blood. In his final hours, as he lay dying from an illness that defied all medical logic, Mandela's uncle confessed to everything. But by then, it was too late. The damage had been done. His confession revealed the depth of his evil, but it did nothing to erase the pain he had caused. Mandela's freedom had come at a cost, but at least justice was served. Her uncle had been exposed for the monster he truly was, and the traffickers who had held her captive were brought to justice. But for Mandela, the journey wasn't just about escaping the horrors of the den. It was about finding a way to rebuild her life, to heal the scars that would stay with her forever. Her uncle's mysterious illness, his inexplicable death, and his confession were the final pieces in a twisted puzzle that had shattered a family. But for Mandela, there was a lesson to be learned from all of it. The betrayal of the person she trusted most had cost her everything. Her future, her innocence, and almost her life. But through it all, she survived. And in the end, that was the greatest victory of all. Mandela's story is a powerful reminder of the fragility of trust and the devastating consequences of betrayal. It teaches us that, no matter how close we think we are to someone, there are no guarantees. Trust must be earned, and not everyone who claims to have your best interests at heart is actually there to protect you. In the darkest of times, however, there is always hope. And in Mandela's case, it was her inner strength, her resilience, and her unwavering will to survive that led her to freedom. Her story is not just one of survival. It is one of redemption, of justice served, and of the unbreakable spirit of a young woman who refused to be defeated. If you found Mandela's story as chilling and powerful as we have, share this video to raise awareness about the dangers of human trafficking and the importance of never giving up, no matter the odds. Stay vigilant, stay strong, and remember, the truth always comes to light, and justice will find its way. Please subscribe to this channel for more chilling and revealing stories.